Getting started with Battletech. Physically, the components, getting started with Battletech, that's what we're going to explore in this vlog from the perspective of someone brand new to the game, the tabletop version of the game, perhaps the video games that brought you in, the narrative, and you're making your way, figuring out where to start, what to build on, and what to purchase first. So right now there's an amazing starter set, Battletech, the Game of Armored Combat, that it's kind of unique as a starter set because it gives you not only everything that you need to literally play right out of the box, but the pieces that are included, the mechs that are included, they're not filler mechs. They're all amazing, amazing mechs. So right away, making this set your starting point is just optimal because, of course, being a miniatures game, your collection will grow in your own time. As you branch out, the pieces in that set, you're always going to have a use for. They're always going to be a part of your lance, your forces, however you divide it, whatever play style you eventually want to go with. Fantastic choices on there. Now, there's also a starter set, a head-to-head set, which includes 2 mechs, one exclusive to that set, the Griffin, and also includes kind of a scaled-down version of the rules. Personally, I would recommend starting with the Game of Armored Combat. Naturally, it's a little bit more, but you get more mechs, you get the full rules, you get the maps in there. At some point, I would recommend picking up the 2-player head-to-head starter set, not for the condensed rules, but simply for the 2 mechs and the additional maps, because that's going to be key playing hex maps. Those 2 sets, amazing foundation, ready to go. If we're going to look at resources, then the Game of Armored Combat. Now, Battletech is kind of unique in that the battles are fought on hex-based maps, and all the units have a hex base. So this way, you can quickly calculate the facing of the mech, any terrain that's in the way, distance. Most of your battles will be on these hex maps. Later on, and certainly you can play Battletech on a more traditional wargaming table. My games are about 50-50 on there. I appreciate the hex maps because they fold, they're very, very portable, they're very, very quick, where a traditional wargaming table naturally takes more space, but then you have 3D terrain. You will explore both of them, but it's good to have a collection, a stockade of hex maps on there. Everything packs up, ready to go. The starter set and the head-to-head set include a nice array of maps. Catalyst also puts out, as of this podcast, as of this vlog, a Grasslands map set, which, yes, I'm a completionist out there, but approaching this from the beginner's mindset, the starter set mindset, they're a little bit pricey. They're maybe $25 to $30 for these hex maps. It is more economical if you want a wide diversity, a wide array of maps to pick up the head-to-head and the Game of Armored Combat set. Later on, you can introduce those other maps. But by itself, Game of Armored Combat is going to give you perfectly everything that you need. Now let's talk about some optional stuff that is going to make the game a little bit easier. And we're staying away from the rules. I should say, on a side note, up on my YouTube channel, in the playlist archive, I review all of the mechs specifically in the starter sets. So that's going to give you some tactica. That's going to give you some ideas to think about. That's going to help you unlock your play style. Battletech, though, without going really, really heavy into the rules, because this vlog is about physically, what do you need to get started on tabletop? It's about understanding modifiers. So I'm going to shoot at your mech, and I have a base modifier based on my gunnery skill of a 4. So on a 2d6, I need a 4 or higher. Those are pretty good odds. But then we begin to stack in, well, the distance, maybe that ups it by +2. Is there terrain? That's +1. Perhaps I've ran, so that's now +2. So you build these modifiers up and down. And it helps, you'll see this in some other Battletech pictures and podcasts and videos, D6 dice that people will put next to their mechs. This represents how many hexes the mech has moved. So when you're looking at 4 or 5 units on the table, you can know how many hexes it's moved and the number that it increases to hit. It's kind of like an interesting player's aid. I prefer to use very, very tiny, the micro D6 dice. I use them in either green or black, so this way they blend into the hex maps. I don't really want to take away the full visuals of the game, but certainly a set of regular D6 dice will do. Think about obtaining a set of these to mark your mechs. Now let's look at the tech sheets on there. Battletech, you have a technical readout sheet with a lot of bubbles and weapon systems and numbers on it. This is the command console of that mech. As you take damage, you're going to fill in those bubbles. You're going to manipulate those bubbles. You're going to cross them off. You're going to make adjustments to damage to internal systems before that mech explodes. A lot of players, what helps is to transform that sheet into some sort of dry erase. Put it in a plastic sleeve, maybe laminate it, get a dry erase marker. Because you're going to utilize these sheets over and over and over again, and the constant filling in the bubbles, then erasing them, filling in, erasing them. I mean, you could pump out a lot of photocopies, you could print out the PDFs, but I think it's more economical and much more easier in the game in terms of carrying stuff around to come up with a way to quickly laminate them or dry erase marker, slip them into one of those plastic slip cases for your reports, ready to go. The last piece, and you might have a lot of these if you're a role player. If you play D&D, I guarantee you right now you're probably staring at one. A D20 dice. D20 dice. You don't need a D20 to play Battletech, but ironically the heat scale of each mech works on a D20 perfectly. Heat is very, very important in Battletech. The hotter you run, the chances are you'll shut down, your ammo will cook off, you'll blow up, you won't be able to fire as many weapons, and heat is constantly building, it's constantly going down based on your heat sinks. Being able to track that with a D20 as opposed to maybe marking off up and down on the mech sheet and constantly erasing it and reapplying it, it makes things a little bit easier. If you're doing the dry erase, then certainly it's not necessary, but I find a D20 works really, really well. That would be the starter. And the Game of Armored Combat starter set with some sheets, some dry erase markers, some D6s, some D20s, that fits up everything in there. A bookend, bookcase game, literally everything you need ready to roll. That's an amazing foundation for Battletech, and that's going to carry you through as you build your collection out.